Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man tabi'ahum bi ihsanin ila yawmiddin. Amma ba'd, fa'a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. My respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Last week we analyzed the book of Graham Fuller, A World Without Islam. We kind of summarized his point of view that most of the world conflicts, they are not originating from religiosity or religious philosophies. They are originating from the geopolitical issues, especially economic as well as the political hegemony. And he has mentioned and he has said that even if you take Islam out of equation, these problems will still remain in the world. And these problems are not only the Islamic problems. The Hindus will react in the same fashion. The Chinese, the Buddhists, and the Christians of Africa will do the same thing when it comes to occupation, economic and political hegemony. In today's discussion, I would like to talk more about the dialogue of civilizations. But before that, I want to give you some facts. The facts which will make it clear to us that that dialogue will not be possible if our policymakers will continue with the same hegemonizing agendas and somehow do not treat the world on equal terms. And you can find this one on the internet, you can find it in Wikipedia. These are not the hidden secrets. Everybody knows it. That perhaps we have got the largest military in the world. Our annual military budget is almost 44 to 45% of the world armed forces budget. The whole world, whatever they spend, the entire world on one side, and you can say almost 44 to 45% of that is just the American budget for its defense department. That we have got 5 components of our armed forces: Navy, Army, Marine Corps, Air Force, and Coast Guard. And in 2011, in the beginning of 2011, we were told that the United States of America spends about $550 billion to fund its military forces. How much? 550 billion. And that does not include $160 billion which are specified to fund overseas contingency operations. So if you combine them, the announced budget of the armed forces of United States of America, it is more than $710 billion. This is something which is announced. Whatever we spend upon other secret operations and secret spying, say for instance, it is other than these 550 billion and 160 billion dollars.
Is the CIA budget under the defense or is it separate?
This is the Pentagon. This is the Pentagon. This is the Defense Department. And at the same time, we have got the largest pile of the most sophisticated weaponry in the world. And we have got our forces all over the globe, all over the world. If you look at the Pentagon's map of the world, you will see as if our armed forces have divided the world into one battleground, where you have got Southcom, Northcom, Southeastcom, Centralcom. The whole world is divided as if we are monitoring the world, as if we are at war against the world, and our forces are placed in the most situated or the most strategic positions in the world. And also, if you look into the numbers, as of September 30th, 2010, there were 1.4 million active duty military personnel in the United States of America's armed forces. And that does not include almost closer to 1 million people who are in the reserved components. We have got those people who are on reserve. So the number is 848,000 people. So if you combine those people, these are the trained people, along with the active duty people. So we've got around 2.5 million armed, trained military personnel in the United States of America's armed forces. And if you look into overseas employment, how many of them are employed outside United States of America, you will see that almost 370,000. How many? 370,000 American armed forces personnel are employed outside the United States of America. And most of them are in the Middle East and in what we call Southeast Asia or South Asia. Majority of them are in the Muslim countries. The United States Armed Forces were stationed at more than 820 installations in the world. How many? 820 installations in the world. This is what is the declared number of bases or installations. In 135 countries, this is what is declared. But Palmer has shown, and the others have shown, that our armed forces have got a lot more than 120 installations, and perhaps in more than 156 countries. In 156 countries. And these bases or these installations are other than the secret installations, the secret spy centers, and the NATO centers or the NATO bases. So if you combine the NATO, which we control kind of, and our secret bases, it will be more than 1,000 installations in the world. More than. This is in addition to almost 6,000 installations here in the United States of America. So you can imagine that here at home as well as outside in the world, there is no other army which can match our power when it comes to weaponry, when it comes to strategic positioning, when it comes to the type of tools which we have got and by means of which we control the strategic choke points of the world. If you look into, say for instance, the number of people, you will see the majority or the large contingents of those people are in Iraq, in Afghanistan, and most of them are situated within what we call the Middle East and South Asia. Even the small countries like Bahrain. Bahrain is like a small town with maybe less than 500,000 population. But we have got strong presence, a huge base there. Qatar, all of us we know, is less than 1 million population, small tiny city, and we have got closer to 10,000 people with a huge base there. Dubai, even Oman. I mean, look at Qatar, look at Abu Dhabi, or look at Dubai, Kuwait. They are just like small tiny cities, but we have got base in almost each one of them. In addition to Saudi Arabia, in addition to Iraq, in addition to Afghanistan. So you can imagine that how many people see our aircrafts, our ships, and our army personnel all over the world. And you know that people do not like the outsiders to be controlling their governments or to be controlling their countries. So the problem is not Islam, with all honesty. Chinese do not like our deployments. Russians do not like our deployments. Koreans or Japanese do not love us when we are there. And by means of our military force, we are kind of interfering or influencing 190 independent countries which come under the banner of United Nations. You can imagine how many of them are left. And sometimes our deployments are in almost every continent. Some of those where there's no problem between us and those nations. For instance, United Kingdom. There has never been any animosity between America and UK, Italy, Spain. You just name it, Australia, New Zealand. And there's not a single continent where we do not have the control. People think that we are watching them. Governments feel that they are being watched. So if something does not work when it comes to the diplomacy, they know that there is a military might, and those military might is projected in such a fashion that everybody feels I am under the gun. So the source of resentment, or why people sometimes do not like the American policymakers or our boots on their grounds, is not because of Islam. It's not because of any religious ideology. It is an issue of the presence of superpower with the military might, and that's where sometimes I really feel that Islam is the victim of these agendas. Because after the Cold War, we do not have the bigger enemy. And there's no way we can prove to our own people or to the world why are we present with such kind of destructive weapons all around the world. So we need to find a bigger enemy, and somehow now Islam is being made scapegoat for those kind of strategies. The issue is oil, energy resources, our political or our military power, and somehow Islam seems to be just the target, because somehow we have to present to our nation that we are dealing with the bigger enemy. Even if those people in Saudi Arabia or in Kuwait or in Afghanistan or in Iraq, they were not Muslims, they will not like it. I will give you the example. Japan does not have too much of its military, and Japan does not go around the world showing their missiles or their F-16s. But you must have heard in Peru, the Japanese embassy was taken as hostage, and almost every Japanese was kind of victim or target of those guerrillas. The reason was that the Japanese government, they helped the president of Peru. His name was, I think, Alberto something. And he was using the Japanese support to quell or to subdue the guerrillas. And at the same time, he opened the doors for Japanese international corporations, and they were spread all over Peru. So the people resented the fact that one of the dictators who is not being liked by the local people is being supported by the Japanese government, and also they did not like the fact that the Japanese corporations are coming and exploiting their resources. So they showed the resentment against the Japanese people. So it was not the fight between Islam or the fight between Christianity, which is mostly the Catholic Christians in Peru, and the Japanese Shintos or Confucius or Buddhist, say for example, people. It was the issue of what? The policies and the sense of rebellion against exploitation. Even nowadays, when you look at the resentment which the Chinese people show towards Japan, this is not because of the present day economic rivalry. The present day, I would say, the capitalist system is almost in both countries, Japan as well as China. But if you go and ask the Chinese, they are still looking for the apology because of what happened in the Second World War, when the Japanese were powerful and they came, and Chinese were mostly the peasants or the farmers. They came, they tried to occupy it, and what they did also, they took the young Chinese girls and turned them into prostitute and provided them to the frontline troops, the Japanese troops. They also used the prisoners of wars to test some of the medicine as you can kind the guinea pigs, and caused a lot of havoc. And that was the result. The blowback took place in the shape of what we call the socialist revolution. Those patients, those ignorant people, they took the law in their own hand. They withstood the pressure, and then after that, what happens? Mao Zedong came, and almost 30 million people were killed. 30 million people were killed in that revolution. The Chinese are not still forgiving the Japanese for what they have done, from violence to aggression to immoral acts with their local people. Both of them are kind of Buddhist countries. They believe in the same religion, but they hate each other because of what? The exploitation and then the competition for the resource. So therefore, when Muslims are standing against India in, say for instance, in Kashmir, now most of them are Muslims, and they do not want to be part of either Pakistan or India. They want to have an independent state. So that's not Islam which is making them fight. In the same fashion, in Afghanistan or in Iraq, when those people are standing up against our occupation, it's not the issue of Islam and Christianity. It is the issue that those people feel that this is our country, we have got the right to govern it the way we want to. We tell them that we will give you the democracy, and we know how it's going to be better for you to behave in your own country or to rule your country. So Islam should not be blamed. Islam should not be blamed because, number one, it gives the legitimacy to those people who are committing some horrible acts in the name of Islam. Because Islam does not allow suicide bombing. Islam does not allow killing of innocent people. When I hear that those ignorant, stupid people, they are coming to the mosque on the day of Jummah, they are blowing themselves and blowing some innocent Muslims who have got nothing to do with America or with Afghanistan or with Pakistan or with Iraq. Like the other day, people are burying their dead body, and in the funeral procession, there is a huge bomb, and those people who are there just to express their sympathy to the people who have already been killed are killed in hundreds, and hundreds are injured. So those ignorant and stupid people who are reacting to our hegemony, reacting to our occupation, they are once again using religious slogans to find the broader support. And unfortunately, when we say that these are Islamists or these are Muslim terrorists or they are doing it because of their religious actions or ideology, we are giving them the legitimacy. Because 1.8 billion human beings, they believe in the legitimacy of Islam. They believe that the Qur'an is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They believe that Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam is the mercy to mankind. So when we come out and say, when our policy makers say that this violence is because of Qur'an, this mindset of terrorism is furnished by the model of Prophet Muhammad sallam, or Islam is the enemy, we are making those few and giving them the support of 1.8 billion human beings, because those Muslims will never abandon their religion or their prophet or their Qur'an. So when you make the Qur'an the target, Prophet Muhammad sallam the target, you are inviting bigger enemy. They are dying for that legitimacy. Remember that those people do not have the support of the scholars from Iran, Pakistan, you can call it from Iraq, anywhere. The Muslim scholars will keep on condemning those acts. The majority of the Muslim community do not subscribe to their ideology. They hate them because they see the suffering on their own hands. But when we give them the legitimacy, and when we say Islam is the problem or these people are fighting because of Islam, we are giving them the bigger or the broader support from within the Muslim community. Those who suffer at their hands, they hate them. But then the others, they say they are the problem, but the bigger problem is somewhere else. So they show the sympathy for them. So we are increasing the number of enemies, and we are increasing the type of their broader appeal. At the same time, don't forget that injustice or atrocities always bring resentment, and violence breeds violence. So when our bombs are killing the innocent people, those people are building reservoir of resentment. So if they cannot fight it right now, they are going to fight it later on. And as Shamar has said it, the name of the book is Blowback, The Costs and Consequences of American Empire. It's Chalmers Johnson. He says, the term blowback, which officials of the Central Intelligence Agency first invented for their own internal use, is starting to circulate among students of international relations. It refers to the unintended consequences of policies that were kept secret from the American people. What the daily press reports as the malign acts of terrorists or drug lords or rogue states or illegal arms merchants often turn out to be blowback from earlier American operations. And then he also says, one man's terrorist is, of course, another man's freedom fighter. And what U.S. officials denounce as unprovoked terrorist attacks on its innocent citizens are often meant as retaliation for previous American imperial actions. Terrorists attack innocent and undefended American targets precisely because American soldiers and sailors firing cruise missiles from ships at sea or sitting in B-52 bombers at extremely high altitudes, or supporting brutal and repressive regimes from Washington seem invulnerable. As members of the Defense Science Board wrote in a 1997 report to the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Technology, and this is the quote from that commission, historical data show a strong correlation between U.S. involvement in international situations and an increase in terrorist attacks against the United States. In addition, the military asymmetry that denies nation states the ability to engage in overt attacks against the United States drives the use of transnational actors, which are the terrorists. I mean, his analysis may look very, very appropriate to the people who are sitting on the other side of the border. Those who are the recipients of our actions, they might feel the way Johnson has been analyzing. But sometimes when we are the perpetrators of that violence, when we do it, our memories are short-lived. But somebody whose mom has been killed, whose children have been killed, those people who have lost their family, they will remember it forever. And they will try to get back whenever they have got the opportunity. And at the same time, we have to look at it from the human perspective. God has not created one superpower as the police of the rest of humanity. And at the same time, whenever injustice, immorality, or some time of inequity takes place, human beings resent it, they get together, they plan, and they try to demoralize the superpower of that time. Sometimes the violence or the hegemony has got a lot of cost. As we have seen in the Iraq and Afghanistan war, we have spent about $3 trillion, or the cost will be over $4 trillion by the time it's done. But at the same time, don't forget that those people who have been engaged in Iraq or in Afghanistan, most of them will come back mentally tired. They will have a lot of fatigue. They will have trauma. Some of them will have disability. So the cost of war and the veteran is going to be a lot more than the cost which is spent upon the military force there in Afghanistan or in Iraq. And don't forget that when people see those boots, and these people are challenged to their local culture. Remember, Afghani culture is not like American culture. Iraqi culture is not like American culture. They feel that they are the threat to their culture, their civilization, their peace, their stability. It's not only that those people, they resent these occupations. Our own veterans resent the military deployment outside the United States of America. The Pew poll has just shown last week that more than 50%, almost 51% veterans of Iraq and Afghanistan war, they believe that the war was not worth the sacrifices the United States of America have made over there. Imagine these are the people who have fought there, who have sacrificed their blood and their families for the sake of this country, and they are seeing that these sacrifices were not worth the type of gains which we have gotten from them. At the same time, these are the people who suffer there, our troops. They really suffer there because the system, the roads, they are not, as equal to America. The entertainment, the type of prosperity which we enjoy and the type of peace which we enjoy here in the United States of America is not available in Afghanistan or even in Egypt or Bahrain or Abu Dhabi, you just name it. Now these people from inside, they suffer from anxiety. That's where the drug rate, the alcoholism, raping, and also the mental anxiety. These are really rampant among our soldiers who are serving outside. And that's where sometimes, even from Germany, even from Japan, even from say for example the other areas like Thailand, wherever our soldiers are there are complaints of constant raping and constant problems. So when they come, they are not the same people. So all of these sufferings, just to maintain our superiority, our control over the resources, our control over the routes, is too much when it comes to the human price. We are paying too much human price. And believe me, that resentment is not only in the Muslim world. That resentment is in UK, that resentment is in Italy, that resentment is in Latin America, wherever our forces are. The famous incident when our, marine pilots, they cut that cable, you remember in Italy, northern Italy, there was a ski resort, and somehow, our pilots did not follow the proper altitude and longitude rules of the United States Armed Forces, as well as the Italian forces, and somehow kind of cut off that cable. And those people who were there for the sake of just joy fell down thousands of feet down, and then almost entire Italian community was kind of resisting, kind of resenting this whole issue. Then the president came out and said, we apologize and we will pay the ransom for that. But then the Pentagon and the Congress, they said, if you start doing it, to the Italian, what about the Japanese? What about the rest of the people? Because we have got these accidents everywhere. We have got these kind of crimes everywhere, these military crimes. Then you will keep on paying to almost every nation. So after promising, they did not pay it to them. Do you think that the Italians love us? And especially, there was an excuse before that Russia is the biggest threat. So if we are not there to defend you, your democracies and your free market will be challenged and demolished. But now there is no Russian threat. Why are we involved in Europe still? We've got thousands of people there in Europe and Germany and in United Kingdom. And there's no Muslim attacking those countries. If we are there to defend them from Islam and Muslim terrorists, no Muslim is attacking Italy or United Kingdom or anybody, or nobody has got the capability to do it. And they are not our enemies. Am I clear what I'm trying to say? So the issue is that somehow, instead of accepting that we have got our economic and our political interest and we are going to defend it because we are the empire, and empires have to have the policing capability all over the world. When we try to make Islam as the enemy, that we are now there because we want to protect the world from Islam, this is number one, injustice to a religion, to the entire faith community. And it is going to be the biggest challenge because we are making 1.8 billion Muslims the enemy for no reason. So this phony enemy is going to turn into the real enemy, which is going to be bad for our nation. So we do not want our nation to suffer. We do not want American people to suffer, as we do not want the Muslims to suffer there or any other human being to suffer. We do not want our own country to suffer. But nowadays we feel that Americans are kind of besieged all over the world. Our businessmen are harassed because people don't like them the way they used to like Americans. Even we, the Muslims who live here, when we go back to visit our countries, people do not like us the way they used to. They don't treat us the way they used to. Somehow they've got this negative understanding of, the Americans, your own relatives, or you can call it jealousy, you can call it whatever way you want to. There was a time, I remember by myself, when I was growing up, just being an American was thought to be the most civilized human being in the world. Educated person, a person who is concerned about the well-being of everybody else. Because we used to use the slogan of human rights, mashallah, put the beautiful slogans in the most comforting rubrics, mashallah, democracy, human rights, women's rights. But nowadays, because of the communication skills and because the whole world has become a global village, everybody can read on the internet what's going on. The news spreads in minutes all over the world. People are able to analyze, and all of the secret issues which we used to do are no more secrets, or at least are exposed by so many other people, and there are some challenging powers also. So therefore now, with more education, with more consciousness, all of those old slogans are no more working. People see that there's a hypocrisy in the way we treat different nations. One nation, we go over there because they are violating human rights. Saddam Hussein was a problem because he was a dictator. But there are other dictators sitting in the neighborhood, no problem. We are in Afghanistan because they were not taking care of the women, or the Taliban were, once again, not respecting the rights of the women, not allow them the driving opportunities, all of these. But there are other nations who are doing the same thing to the women. So people feel it is not those beautiful slogans, it is the lithium, say for example, reservoirs in Afghanistan, because over $3 trillion worth of lithium is in Afghanistan. And nowadays the problem is that some of the renewable sources of energy, like oil and gas, they are coming to an end. Anybody who has got the control upon non-renewable energy sources like lithium is going to be controlling the world. We use the computer, we unplug the electricity. Now, if the battery is, mashallah, 3, 4, 5 hours, we can sit in the flight or go all the way to Europe and you can use the computer. Same thing happens with your missiles, other batteries. And they are made of lithium, which is in Afghanistan. And at the same time, if you look into the oil reservoirs, the majority of the world's oil resources are in the Middle East, Persian Gulf and the Middle East. And I'll read the statistics. Number 2 is in what we call the Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, though used to be the Russian states, the states which are around the Caspian Sea. So after the Gulf oil, reserves are going to be coming to an end after maybe 50, 60 years. The number 2 is in the Caspian Sea, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, and they are landlocked. The only way you can get those kind of, oil resources and chemical resources is through Afghanistan and northern Pakistan, to bring them to the Persian Gulf. So the whole problem in Afghanistan is not Taliban, is not Islam, is not the woman. We should come out and say, yes, we need these reserves because our country is based upon the energy, and we are there. Don't blame Islam. Say we are there. We are there to protect these routes, and these people, they are fighting us. So it's a fight which is based upon energy issues, oil issues, chemical issues, the different kinds of strategic positions. Don't blame Islam. Because if you look at the number of most of the organizations which are taken as the enemies, majority of them are Islamic such and such, Muslim such and such. So even anybody who says something or he's Islamist, what does Islam has to do with all of these things? Those people, they think that these are our resources. We need to have the control upon them. We need to have the equal share in them. But like colonial power, we want to take that raw material, turn it into the batteries and sell it with double and triple. So this is nothing but the colonial mentality, which is take the raw material and make the money out of it. I mean, our Pentagon sells more weapons to the world than anybody else in the world. This is our biggest business. So we want to control the market, we want to control the oil, we want to control everything. So for God's sake, don't bring Islam into it, because Islam is the religion of so many people who love it, who respect it, and they are emotionally attached with it. And when you bring Islam, you hurt the feeling of 1.8 billion human beings who have got nothing to do in that fight of resources and the struggle. If you look at this map, you will see that the biggest oil reserves are in the Middle East. You can see both of them. And then you have got here the Caspian Sea. So we can get some of them through Turkey, but the others, if you have to do it with the land, it has to come through Afghanistan, because there's no other way you can make it. And Afghanistan comes to an end, and it's the northern Pakistan which is connected with the sea. So if you don't control the northern Pakistan, and even if you control Afghanistan, you cannot bring those oil back to the Persian Gulf. So the problem at this time is the issue of resources. But unfortunately, the people are using Islam over there, and we are fighting Islam over here for no reasons other than our issues connected with our hegemony. Now, the US domestic consumption of oil exceeds 20 million barrels per day. How much? 20 million barrels per day. 26% of total world consumption. The whole world uses what? 74, and only United States of America uses what? 26% of the oil consumption of the world. An amount higher than the yearly consumption for all of Europe and all of Africa combined. The entire continent of Europe, entire continent of Africa does not use as much oil as we just use in 1 year. Now, US oil imports constitute 56% of total consumption and are expected to reach 66% by 2020. We'll be using what? 66% by 2020. The US contains only 2.8% of total proven world oil reserves. We have got what? Around 2.8% of the oil reserves of the world. 2/3 of the world's proven oil and natural gas reserves are in the Middle East. 2/3 of what? The oil reserves, and the gas is where? In the Middle East. Notably, Saudi Arabia, the Gulf states, Iran, and Iraq. Very substantial oil and natural gas reserves are located in the overlapping region of Caspian Sea Basin, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Russia, Turkmenistan, and Iran. So if you go to those mountainous areas, Iran, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, they've got huge reservoirs also. Tentative estimates provided by the Energy Information Administration place total proven and possible oil reserves at 243 billion barrels, or in excess of 25% of present global reserves. Iraq currently produces 11% of the world's oil, and it ranks only second to Saudi Arabia in the size of its reserves, 120 billion barrels. Exploitation costs are less than half those of deep sea drilling, because when you go to deep sea, The cost of drilling is double or triple. This is desert, just the land. So those wells are lot cheaper and lot cheaper to be maintained. And you just bring them to the Persian Sea and from there to Mediterranean Sea and from there to North Sea and then back to Atlantic Ocean. Direct access to the Persian Gulf and the Indian Ocean ensures strategically secure oil supply routes. As we have talked about yesterday, the Persian Gulf to what we call the Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Makran side, from this side, Gwadar, and then passing by Oman and Yemen, Somalia, Ethiopia, Egypt, Saudi Arabia first, then Egypt, then the Suez Canal, and that's where Israel is sitting to ensure that those routes are what? Controlled. And that's where we have got our bases from Pakistan to Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Oman, Qatar, all of those supply routes. There's somebody with the name of Eric Weddell, E-R-I-C, W-A-D-D-E-L-L. He's a professor of geography at Level University. This is his report. He says, the oil reserves of the U.S. are estimated at a meager 22 billion barrels. 22 billion barrels. The broader region of the Middle East and the Caspian Sea basin has oil reserves which are more than 30 times those of the U.S., representing more than 70% of the world's total reserves. So most of those reserves are located in the Muslim world. Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Iran, Persian Gulf, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Qatar, even Sudan. So the problem is not Islam. The problem is that the resources are in the Muslim world and they are strategically located in the middle of the world, stretched from the north, which is in Morocco, to south, which is all the way, or you can say west in Morocco, and you can call it, and then the east is in Fiji, Indonesia, and Malaysia, all over the world. So world cannot deal with each other than dealing with the Muslim countries. World cannot live without those resources. So to control those routes and to guarantee those resources is the policy of United States of America. So don't blame Islam. Just say this is our need and we are not going to let people off the hook. Don't make Islam responsible for all of these resistance. The control of this region by the Anglo-American oil giants means control over at least 3/4 of the world's supply of oil and natural gas. It would also mean control over the westbound, eastbound, and southbound oil and gas pipeline routes out of the region. The U.S. is responsible for 50 million metric tons of greenhouse emissions, representing 20% of the world total. The U.S. tend to view the Earth's surface as a vast territory to conquer, occupy, and exploit. The fact that the U.S. military splits the world up into geographic command units vividly illustrates this underlying geopolitical reality. This is what Eric Weddell. Anyhow, you can read all of these details on the internet. In today's lecture, what I'm trying to say is that with this kind of military might and military show-off, and with this kind of hegemony of world trade routes, natural resources, it's going to be very difficult to have the proper dialogue between civilization or between people. Because somehow, as I mentioned, with the communication, outbursts, it's not possible for us to use the type of beautiful word which we used to. People have become a lot more educated and more conscious of their own urges, desires to control those areas. So the best thing for us is to forget about those days when we can hide those things and manipulate the people and they will not resist. So I believe it is time for us to understand that the empires do not continue to be empires, for eternity. There are times when there are ups and downs. You may not have those downs right now, But look at the Russian Empire. The Russian Empire tried to control these reservoirs, but somehow they did not pay much attention to within the development and progress, and the empire was what? Distributed into small countries. And now those countries are fighting against Russia, and there were times when they were part of the Russian Empire or the Russian bloc. At the same time, to maintain the cost of the military presence all over the world is too much for an empire to maintain. All of us, we know the Roman Empire was divided into Byzantium, Eastern and Western, and then went into small states, as we have seen in Europe. And finally, Europe felt that we cannot maintain these nationalistic states. No, they have come into the European Union. In the same fashion, we are seeing the impact of occupation in Iraq and impact of occupation in Afghanistan. All of us, we know that the numbers are decreasing when it comes to employment. Our military installations, which are owned by Pentagon, they occupy millions and millions of acres of land all over the world. And the buildings which are used for military purpose are the largest, you can call, continuation of buildings in the world, which come under one entity. So to maintain these things, it's not going to be very easy, especially when you have got the rival forces. So therefore, what we need to understand is that somehow figure out what is really at stake and how we can give this kind of sense of equality or sense of, say for example, the dignity to other nations. And that will not be done if you just accuse or blame or allege the entire faith tradition as responsible for terrorism or as responsible for violence. So therefore, what's going to be happening is, I think our policymakers will have to look that it's not possible for them to secularize the Muslim world. Because if by secularization they mean that they abandon Qur'an, they abandon Prophet Muhammad sallam, or they abandon their spirituality, it will not happen. It will bring more and more resentment. What they should do is that they should present the American model, the American society itself, to the world, because they can sell this product more than they can sell their weapons or they can sell the rest of that. Because here in this society, we have noticed that it is such a beautiful pluralistic society where Muslims, Christians, Jews, Hindus, everybody can coexist. All of us, we know, we do not see the Muslim fighting the Christians or the Jews fighting over here while they are fighting in Palestine or they are fighting in Kashmir. The same Hindus and the same Muslims can sit together and work together here. Same Jewish community and the Muslim community can work here in the United States of America because the system allows it, and nobody is usurping or exploiting the other person's right. Everybody feels I've got a share, I've got a stake in this kind of, mosaic. So people are working hard, they respect each other, they agree wherever they want to agree, and they disagree wherever they want to disagree, but they do not fight because the system allows that kind of respectable competition within the skeleton or the parameters established by the government or by the constitution. This is the product which we can sell to the whole world. People love American society, they love American educational institutions, they love American technology, they love even the Hollywood, all of kind of entertainment. This is the product, if you sell it, people will love you, respect you, and especially when you do not bring the issue of religion or make the enemy out of a religion or a religious community. At the same time, I honestly feel that Islam or the authentic Islamic teachings, they are the closest to the pattern which is established in the American Constitution. We have studied and we have talked about how the American founding fathers were very much impressed by the natural philosophers of Islam, that even life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, they are the summarized versions of the 5 objectives of Islamic Shari'ah. Life, family, property, the freedom of religion and the freedom of, say, for example, intellect or reason. So if somehow our policymakers will study not the way Islam is being portrayed by those extremists, or by some of our ignorant scholars, or by some of those people who do not understand the geopolitical issues, but the authentic Islamic teachings from within the Qur'an, from within the ahadith of Rasulullah sallam, from within the Shari'ah, they will see that there is compatibility between the democratic values of the modern world and the Islamic values of human equality, justice, and at the same time proper distribution of resources, and at the same time morality. So I see that there could be the alliance between civilizations, the Western American civilization, along with the Muslim civilization, based upon morality, based upon issues of justice, based upon proper or the fair distribution of resources, and at the same time kind of treating each other on the equal levels, not as inferiors or superior, or not showing them the military might or hegemonizing them by our military might or power, but by means of having the dialogue and distributing those resources so that they can benefit and we can benefit. But if that will not happen, and if we continue with the way we are continuing, then in the long term, world is not going to be accepting our hegemony, and perhaps we will be the losers like other empires if we do not come back to our senses and become conscious of our moral leadership and our moral responsibility. I hope that the message is clear. I mean, the most important issue is for us to separate the resistance from the religious ideology. Because with all honesty, when they attack Islam, when they make Islam the alleged, say for example, enemy, then all of us will feel threatened. And there's no way you can take Islam out of the mind of a Muslim. If there's no belief in the Qur'an, no Prophet Muhammad sallam, there's nothing of Islam left. And I don't think Muslims will do it at any cost. So therefore, it's good for America not to make Islam the enemy. And it's good for Muslims not to make America the enemy, because America is not anti-Islamic at all. As Muslims, we have seen perhaps, and I do not feel any hesitation, and sometimes my friends back home do not like it at all, I feel no hesitation in saying that perhaps I am able to become better Muslim in America than being in Pakistan or many of the Muslim countries, because the system over there forces you to pay bribe. To even take your basic rights, you have to violate the Islamic rules and regulations. The issue of morality, lying, cheating, they are part of the system. You cannot survive there without compromising morality. Here, you've got so many immoral things, from drinking to womanizing, but you've got the choice. You are not forced to do it. If you don't want to be part of that, you've got the right to sit on the side and not drink. You have got the right, to enjoy the goodness of America and avoid those things which are Islamically not permissible. But when a system imposes immoral actions upon you, from bribery, from all of those basic human rights, you cannot take it unless you compromise some of the moral principles, then it's very difficult.
Traffic violation.
MashaAllah, there are no traffic rules there. What about violation? Once you go from here, it's difficult even to drive in France or in Germany or anywhere else, because, with all honesty, this country is the best of what human being can offer in the 21st century. So therefore, we do not want our religious identity to be in conflict with our national identity. We want the prosperity of this country, and we want the prosperity of our nation, our ummah, and also the human beings. Because equality of humanity and human dignity and fair dealing and fair distribution of resources, this is what is the God-given right of the people. Unfortunately, there are people who are dying in Somalia or in East Africa who are unable to find enough to eat or enough to drink. And there are people who are dying here in the United States of America because of overeating, maybe including me. As you know, the type of food which we waste annually can feed the entire world 3 times over. What is going to be our answer to God Almighty? Yes, you want to have enough to live off. You want to have enough to survive. But you don't want to deprive other people of their basic necessities. So therefore, I think if we follow the basic constitutional rights or the ideology which our forefathers used for ourselves and for humanity, that is very much compatible with Islamic Shari'ah, very much compatible with Islamic principles, and maybe that will be the gift to the Islamic world. That is not something which Islamic world has lost only right now. They have lost it for the last 3 centuries. And when we lost it, the others, like the Enlightenment people, like the Westerns, like the Americans, they adopted it, but when they got it, they saw the blessings of it. Because of their imperial interest and agendas, they become also very greedy and lost the sense of what the founding fathers wanted this country to be. So maybe by means of this dialogue of civilization, that could be done, where each nation, each locality, each ethnic sit down and talk about these things, and maybe with proper distribution of resources, we can contribute to the well-being and the peace of the world. Jazakumullah khair. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless all of you.